Good afternoon everybody and welcome to this week's Lunch and Learn webinar. We run weekly webinars aimed to provide advice and share knowledge on key business topics and specialist areas. Joining me today is BizSmart Select member Ralf Webb from Sales, Print and Design. In today's webinar, Ralf will be taking us behind the scenes in the print industry. Ralf, would you like to tell us more about the work you do?
Thank you, Caroline. Good afternoon. My name is Ralf Webb and my business is Sales, Print Design. We're specialist printers to industry, but we're slightly different from the average printer because we're print brokers. We outsource all our clients' requirements using trade-only specialists, printers all around the country. So we are able to bolt on to exactly the right people who've got the right equipment to produce best job, the best costs.
Great, thank you Ralf. Before we start the webinar, can I ask you if you have any questions throughout the session, please send them to us and Ralf will do his best to answer them at the end. Over to you now Ralf, if you'd like to start your presentation.
Thanks Caroline. I've got actually 30 years of experience in the printing industry and actually 5 generations. My experience was producing a factory producing 15 years of forms and that way we were able to, being a trade manufacturer, produce forms for other brokers. It's an unknown myth that not every printer has got the right machines to print every job. The variety of clients' requirements these days is massive, from forms, labels, brochures, promotional items and large format, to name just a few. Most general printers will be trying their best to print your job on the kit that they have. This can often lead to substandard results, disappointment for the client, and a situation where, in fact, the printer is trying to produce a job and struggling to produce it to the correct quality. This is particularly noticeable where clients have large solid areas of print ink going down onto the paper, and unless the press has got the right rolling power to produce that amount of quality of ink going down and also the necessary dryers on the press, you will often get a situation where the job is substandard. If you've given your order to your printer, if they can't actually produce it on the equipment that they have got themselves, they will be outsourcing all or part of it anyway. So, for those of you who have been stuck on the motorway, behind those plain white vans racing around, you will often, if you look in the back of them, find pallets of unfinished printing, shrink-wrapped, going to print finishing factories or other factories for specialist operations that the actual printer themselves cannot produce. For example, creasing, laminating, making up, or another operation that is potentially could be done and outsourced is insertion of a data mailing into envelopes for onward distribution. So your printer is trying to print his jobs on his machine and coordinate all this outsourcing at the same time. This outsourcing operation is something that I am doing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Okay, so let's explore the difference between the quality and the quantity on digital and the cost effectiveness of switching from digital to conventional lithographic printing. Digital printing is ideal for small runs on standard paper and board and standard sizes. In actuality, digital printing is effectively posh photocopying. If you've got a standard size, standard laser type sheet paper or thin card, it will go through these digital presses. The limitations, though, are the fact that you cannot put very thick card through these machines, and also you cannot do anything out of the ordinary. So anything outside the ordinary will need to go onto a standard printing machine. The cost of digital printing is basically on a pay per copy basis. So if you have one, you pay X, and if you have 10, you pay 10 times X. When you go on to litho or conventional printing, you will have savings on the longer run jobs. I'll explain a little bit more about this in my next page. So when we come to setting up a standard litho printing machine, this takes time. You have to put a plate onto the press, you have to ensure that the blanket is correctly cleaned, and you have to ensure that the press is set up for the right thickness of the paper, and the paper has to be loaded into the back, and everything's set up for that size of the job. Once that is done, then you can then start the press rolling. The advantage of that is that once that press is rolling, the press speed is very much higher than the digital. Digital effectively is just the same speed. You press the button and you get one, and then you wait exactly the same time and you get 10 times one for 10 copies, and you are just charged a click charge for the amount that you have. So it's a case really of finding the right machine for the right job. If you've got a short run digital type job, then it's a conventional paper, conventional card, and it will go through okay. But as soon as you start getting into the realms of very thick cards or longer runs or big solid areas, then that is when you need to start looking at conventional litho type printing. Right, the great unknown. As I tried to explain earlier, the amount of factories that are hidden away all around the country is massive. The trade underworld is huge in the printing industry, and there is a massive amount of subcontracting rather, that goes on. If we take a standard lithographic sheet-fed printing machine, and if you put load sheets of paper into the back of that machine, then that press has got a fixed speed that it can go at. It's all about saving time. Time is money. So, for example, if we can then switch the job onto a reel fed machine, there are straight away advantages. The first advantage is that instead of the paper mill supplying and cutting down the sheets and those sheets being wrapped and sent out to the printer, if the mill is simply supplying a reel of paper that can be up to 5,000 meters long, then obviously there is a saving of cost of that paper. because there has been one less operation at the mill. If we take a job, for example, where there may be 100,000 forms or letterheads, let's take them as A4, and a standard sheet-fed printing machine would print that job in 5 hours. That is based on 10,000 impressions per hour, with the letterhead being produced 2 to view. A reel-fed machine, however, would run that job at 300 feet per minute. So effectively that would take 2 3/4 hours. So you can see that once you get into the higher volumes, switching from sheets to reels is the big advantage. However, most of the reel-fed forms factories are in fact trade only. So they only are being fed work that they can produce. It's very niche market, and they only deal with brokers like myself. So we are trying to effectively match the printing job with the right machine. So whether it is a label printing machine with a multiplicity of colours, a standard litho printing machine with perhaps 4 towers that would print a conventional job, or whether it is a large format printing machine printing images that will go on the side of buildings or on buses or on cars, or vinyl wrapping machines. It's very much a case of making sure you're matching the right product to the right factory to get the best quality on the job accordingly. So after 30 years in the trade, I've got excellent contacts to source these products, and I've also got the contacts that if somebody says to me, can you do this, then I can outsource it by making a couple of phone calls. I can find the right factory on behalf of my clients. Okay, so in conclusion, the real fact is that there is an underworld out there of specialist factories, of print finishing factories, and your printer will probably be outsourcing some or all of the orders that they get to these factories. And the advantage of using somebody like myself is that that is what I do all the time. So effectively I'm outsourcing straight to the right factory for the best result for your printed job.
Perfect, Ralf. Thank you very much for that. We're looking now to see if there's any questions from you all. So if you'd like to send us some, then please do so now. We've got a number of questions now. The first one: what is the cut-off amount for digital print run before litho or conventional printing becomes more cost-effective?
The answer to that is it's usually about 1,000 impressions. Digital printing's come on tremendously in the last 10 years, and as digital printing gets improves, obviously the quantities will go up. There is a large crossover between the amount and the quality. So you might look at a job where it is perhaps 500 run, but because of the quality of that job, you might decide to say, right, it might be slightly more expensive to go conventional and set up a litho machine to do it, but you'll get a better result. For example, a job with a large solid printed area will get a much better result on a litho machine as opposed to a digital machine.
Thank you. Given the decline in printed matter over the last few years and the demise of the large paper merchants, how do you see the industry going?
It's changing all the time. People say to me, oh, it's a very hard industry to be in and it's a dying industry, but it isn't. People love to have a piece of printed matter in their hands, whether that is a magazine that they flick over in the comfort of their home, or whether it is a standard form or a corporate brochure. Also, items like labelling products, particularly if you've got a box and the box is being sent out, it's got to have a label, whether that is a plain thermal label that is printed actually at the factory, or whether that label is pre-printed and is stuck on by hand or by machine application. So I don't think the print industry is going to die. It is just going to change, and it is changing, there's no doubt, at a massive rate.
Perfect, thank you. What are the common pitfalls business owners fall into when outsourcing to a printer?
Yeah, the main pitfall is, in my opinion, not supplying the correct files for the correct job. So, for example, it's vital that you proof and double check every job that goes out to print, and also you can ask for actual press proofs or calibrated proofs. So if you've got an actual copy of a calibrated proof in your hand, that is a sample of exactly the job that you're going to get.
Great, thank you. Got lots more questions.
Oh, right.
Can you please explain the difference between CMYK and RGB?
Okay, RGB is used for screens and for TV monitors and computers, and they are all, if you look very closely at your telly one day, you'll see that there are dots of red, green and blue, and that's what makes up the picture on the screen. When these are transposed over to conventional printing or digital printing, we use CMYK, which stands for cyan, magenta, yellow and black. And cyan is the blue element, magenta is the red element, Y is the yellow element and K is the black element, and those then combine to make up the four colour process that it is used in the printing industry.
Okay, and sorry to add on to that, and the need for the right colour model for the right job, and the need for the right resolution needed to print.
Oh yes, right, okay. Well, as well as running jobs CMYK, which is 4-colour process, we also use the Pantone range of colours. Now these are industry standards which are either used for coated stock or uncoated stock. So you can specify a number. So for example, you could specify 108, Pantone 108, which is a yellow, and you can then be assured that if you use that number, that colour will be the same as to whether it is printed by myself or by somebody else. However, I will caveat that different substrates, the printed colour will differ because of their different substrates that the job is printed on. So for example, if you print it onto a laser sheet, it will be a 108U, it will be an uncoated colour. If you went onto a gloss paper, it would be a 108C, which would mean that it is onto a coated stock. But then, of course, if you went onto a vinyl sheet or onto plastic, you will get variations in that. You will get variations because of the substrate you're printing onto.
Okay, thank you. Another question. Are there different finishes available? Spot, UV, gloss laminate, matte laminate on both litho and digital?
Yeah, in my experience, the specialist finishes that are available, for example, spot UV, gloss laminate or a matte laminate, are usually only put onto a litho quality print. Usually clients' requirements are such that they are in the higher volume run and therefore will only use those extra finishes when they're running those higher volumes. However, I don't see any reason why you couldn't do a matte laminate or a gloss laminate onto a digital job, but whether it would be cost effective would be questionable. And if you are, again, printing digitally, I would suggest, if you're going to have a matte or gloss laminate, to switch it to litho, because you will have a more even colour distribution as opposed to a digital print.
Okay, thank you. What can I do if I'm not happy with the quality of my print?
Stick it in the bin. I think, going back to what I said earlier, it's vital that you communicate all your requirements at the beginning. Even if we have clients supply us with press-ready files, we will do pre-flight checks on them and then run them right the way through, or it's called ripping them through the processor before it goes onto the machine, and we will then create a calibrated proof that can be checked, and that can actually be done on the correct stock that the job is going to be printed on. So that way you try and eliminate as many factors of error or dissatisfaction before the job goes to press. But unfortunately, once that big red button is pressed and the sheet's coming out at 300 feet a minute, I'm afraid that's it.
Done deal.
It's done deal, yeah.
So realistically, what is the turnaround time for printing jobs, and can this affect the price that's charged?
Yes, the speed in which the job is produced is directly proportional to the job itself. So if you've got a standard small digital job, some simple leaflets or a short run of letterheads, that could in theory be done very next day. The longer run jobs and the more complicated jobs obviously take longer to produce. I've taken an order recently for some forms, and because of the specific size of the form, it's a very specialised size, we're actually having a mill making of paper produced specially for that job, so that there is so little waste when the job actually runs through the machine. Obviously, you've then got the lead time for the mill to produce the paper before you can then start the factory operation, so the lead time will kick out. And yes, if you need a job doing very, very quickly, often some factories might have to take a job off to put your job on, or put you ahead of jump the queue effectively, and largely there will be a surcharge for that operation. So if you know you've got a project coming up, it's always better to have the job ready and waiting and done and dusted before the event, so that you're not putting yourself under pressure and obviously those around you.
Thank you. Right, well, just can you, before you go, is there any tips that you can give us business owners to get the most out of our printers?
I think it's vital that you get a great design. That's the important thing, and then that the design is workable and will work with the actual final printed job. And I think that the information that you want given the final job is vital. So, for example, if you want it boxed in a specific way, if you want them shrink wrapped in a certain amount, you've got to give all of the information right at the very beginning. There's no point in drip feeding, oh, I need it delivering to 4 addresses, oh, I need an extra colour on, or oh, I need them shrink wrapped. It's vital that at the beginning we've got all of the information, your printer's got all of the information that he can then set that job in operation for a smooth flow through that factory, as opposed to it being stopped at various stages because the distribution details aren't clear or the packaging details aren't clear, or so it's a matter of gaining all of the information at the beginning so that you've got a smooth flow through the factory.
Great, thank you very much, Ralf. That was a very interesting session, and you had to answer a lot of questions there. I'll be sending out a copy of Ralf's presentation with his contact details on to everybody this afternoon. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope you can join us again for next week's webinar. Many thanks then. Bye.